Hi, I'm Rose Cora Perry. Welcome to Professor Headbanger's YouTube channel. I am a Canadian singer-songwriter and the frontwoman of rock and roll band The Truth Untold. I've been asked to answer some interview questions, so hopefully I will be a somewhat entertaining subject for you, talking about music and being an independent artist and the Canadian landscape and kind of everything in between.
You've been performing since the age of 4 and writing since 7. How did your early experiences shape the artist you are today?
So believe it or not, I actually started writing songs when I was 7. I won't say that they were good, but that is when I started writing songs. And then I first started performing actually at the age of 4. And in terms of how this has all shaped me into the front woman that I am today, truthfully, believe it or not, way back in the day, as much as I loved being in the spotlight and I loved being able to share the gift of music and performance with people, I used to suffer from tremendous stage fright. So anytime I would walk out on the stage, I'd get the wobbly legs. They just start shaking crazily, and it added a tremendous amount of vibrato to my voice, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing because I was singing classical and kind of opera sort of torch music back in that day, but certainly was not the effect that I was after. And I really found that I didn't find my footing and my confidence as a rock and roll frontwoman and as a performer until I started playing with other musicians. So there's something really magical about coming together and sharing that experience with your fellow players and just kind of looking over and being like, yeah, we got this. We're a team and we're kind of all rocking together on that same wavelength. And I think an audience can really perceive on that energy as well. They can feel a band when that band is like grooving and really into what they're doing and kind of sharing that love of music interconnectedly with themselves, but then likewise with the people that are attending. So I think it was probably good, as they say, to rip the proverbial Band-Aid off to start at a very, very young age, because it certainly got my feet wet early and got me out on stage when I wasn't necessarily ready. But now I live for it. There's nothing that gives me more joy in the world than stepping out on stage and just rocking for people and connecting with them musically.
You've fronted both solo projects and bands like Anti-Hero and The Truth Untold. How do you approach music differently in a band setting versus as a solo artist?
That's a great question. So when I'm writing for the band, I mean, truthfully, when I'm writing, I never really have preconceived notions of what the music should sound like as a final product. I'm somebody who very much believes that songwriting should be authentic. You write what you know, you write what you feel. I don't ever try to force the process. Honestly, a lot of it really depends on my mood. Sometimes I write singer-songwriter kind of folk stuff. Sometimes I write pop punk. I'm like, where did this come from? Too much Blink-182, I guess, in my childhood. And then sometimes I write, what I'm mostly known for, which is alternative and hard rock. And what I've found is that because I write in kind of a variety of different genres, the ones that end up going with the band, the Truth Untold, tend to be the alternative ones, just because that's sort of the aesthetic that we're after, that hard rock, 90s influenced alternative vibe. Whereas the singer-songwriter stuff, it tends to be a little bit more personal, maybe a little bit more vulnerable. I have toyed with the idea of putting out another solo album, the singer-songwriter vibe, because I know that, a lot of my audience members do enjoy that softer side of me, so to speak. But a lot of that music is really more personal and it's really just more cathartic. And I'm not writing it necessarily for an audience. I'm writing it as a means of processing my emotions. So I don't think I approach songwriting altogether differently. I think where the difference comes from is in terms of how I select what is going to kind of be public domain versus what is just sort of for me and for my little heart and what is, I'm feeling at that time.
Your music blends various genres, from rock to jazz. How do you decide on the sound for each project?
Again, I don't really go into anything with preconceived notions. Hilariously, the Truth Untold, the reason that it formed is because in 2016, I was actually gearing up to release my second solo album. And that was a very much singer-songwriter kind of album. There was some beautiful piano-driven and acoustic guitar-driven melodies too. And then the moment that I kind of met my touring band members at that time, it reignited my love of distortion. And I'm like, oh no. I'm about to go on the road trying to perform and promote music that not at all is going to reflect what we're going to do for live arrangements, because all of a sudden I've got an amplifier in front of me that I fell in love with. Thank you, Black Star, by the way. You make the best amps ever. I fell in love with distortion, and it just reignited my desire to want to be a rock and roll frontwoman again. So I don't think I decided on what the Truth Untold was going to be. I think that the universe basically decided that no, I wasn't done being a rock frontwoman. And then I started writing music specifically for the Truth Untold. That's how it was coming out. I was feeling that alternative rock and roll vibe again, as opposed to just doing the singer-songwriter thing. And it became an entity unto itself. None of that was preconceived. Again, something that's always been really important to me artistically is to be authentic. And I think that's kind of good message and advice for life in general, irrespective of whether you're musically inclined or you're just talking about how you want to interact with people in the world in general. Be yourself, be unapologetic. That doesn't mean to be an ass, but be yourself, know who you are, and feel confident about who you are on the inside and out.
What has been the most defining moment of your career so far?
Whew, that is a loaded question. What I would say is I've had, truthfully, such an honor to be able to perform at some amazing venues and with amazing artists and be able to meet some just absolutely incredibly inspiring people along the way in my journey as a songwriter and a musician and a frontwoman. I would say probably the two most monumental experiences that I've ever been able to have and have as part of my career is, number one, absolutely performing at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles and sharing the stage with just some incredibly talented and incredibly amazing musicians and being welcomed as an equal. And I'm like, you play for Pat Benatar's band, you're members of L7, how am I an equal? But it was just such a cool experience and such a welcoming experience, and just no egos, no BS. That's how music should be. It should just be this uniting force that draws not only musicians together, but your audience together. You just connect with people, and all those barriers of difference, they cease to exist. So that was incredible. Being able to play on the final edition of Warped Tour was a pretty huge honor, because I had gotten to play a Warped Tour a couple times prior with a previous project. So that was pretty awesome, and a pretty huge honor that Kevin Lyman was welcoming us back to be able to perform. That was cool. And then also playing CBGB's, rest in peace, before it went defunct. I've definitely had the privilege of being able to play some of the most infamous rock and roll venues and events across North America, and I certainly have never taken any of that for granted, for sure. So I'm just appreciative of those opportunities so far, and I look forward to more in the future.
Your lyrics often tackle deep and introspective themes. What inspires your songwriting process?
How I'm feeling is what inspires my songwriting process. Again, I really strive to be authentic and genuine with everything that I'm doing. And so inspiration comes from a variety of things. Obviously, first and foremost, if things are affecting me on a very personal basis. So, for example, Not My Time, which was kind of the very first Truth Untold, pardon the pun, single was inspired by COVID, which I experienced personally. I was extremely ill. I was truthfully scared of my own ability to be able to get through that. There was also the mix and the influence of everything that was going on in the media. And obviously that wears on your psyche tremendously when you're feeling really vulnerable and you're feeling unwell yourself. On top of that, just a couple months prior, my older brother, my only sibling, had passed away. So I was already emotional, thinking about how much that completely just tore apart my family. And I really had to be the rock for both of my parents. And I'm like, oh my God, if I go too, they now have no children. Like, that is just an incredible thing to be going through your head when you're feeling tremendously ill and worried if you're going to get out of it. So that was an extremely personal experience, an extremely emotional experience, an extremely scary experience. And I couldn't have faked what I was feeling, at the time. So Not My Time comes from a very vulnerable, a very, very real place based off of those experiences. But then I've also written other songs where, maybe I've seen something in the media about politics or social policies. And I'm like, that doesn't really rub me the right way. That kind of makes me feel like I should be questioning things and maybe questioning, the messages, that are being sort of transmitted out to society. And is that really in the greater good's interest, so to speak? So that's where a song like Easy Prey or The Cure might come from. So it's not that I ever try to limit where my inspiration comes from. I guess it just really depends on what's impacting me on emotional and a personal level. And that could be something, that's sort of affecting all of the world, or it could be something that affects me from a really, really personal, deep lived experience.
Your latest single, The Cure, has been receiving great attention. Can you walk us through the creative process behind it?
Honestly, I kind of heard a riff in my head and that's where I started. And I believe when I was writing that one, I heard the tell me in the chorus is kind of the first idea that I wanted to put pen to paper. And, just like with everything that I'm writing, I kind of hear the first couple of lyrics or the first little bit of the melody. I pick up my acoustic guitar. Her name is Delilah. That's my songwriting guitar. And I sort of chord out and plunk out what the arrangement's going to be. And it just comes together. Most of the songs that I write, I usually do within about 5 minutes, truthfully. I kind of have the whole structure from the beginning to the end figured out arrangement wise. And then where the really creative part comes together is when I get to experiment and come up with vocal harmonies, which is kind of my thing. I love it. I love writing, 3 to 5 part harmonies for all of my songs and just getting really, really creative in the studio. I wish, I had a chorus behind me at times so I could pull all of that stuff off live, but I'm super thankful and super excited that I've got the amazing Jesse Tainton as my bassist and my backing vocalist. And we've got John William Kostecki joining us this year on tour as well on lead guitar. And he will also be taking on some backing vocals. So we've gone from 1 singer to 3, which is pretty fabulous. And of course, no offense to our amazing drummer, Steve. I'll never be able to pronounce your last name. It's something like Skirtish. He doesn't sing. If he had a microphone, undoubtedly we would get kicked off of every event that we play. So it's probably for the best. But my creative process, essentially, honestly, inspiration hits. And I hear something in my head. As I said, it's usually the beginning of the lyrics or the beginning of the melody, sometimes the chorus. And I just kind of see where it goes and let it unfold really organically.
What's the biggest misconception about being an independent musician?
Whew, that's a loaded question. Probably that if you're independent, you would assume that, you're empowered to do everything and it doesn't cost any money. So it's not a big deal if people don't buy merchandise or, they don't actually buy your music online. just because we can put things on the internet now without going through a record label or a distributor or having a booker or a manager take a percentage of what it is that we're doing doesn't mean that it doesn't cost a tremendous investment in time, money, blood, sweat, and tears. So not to harp, but truthfully, if you want to support any musician, whether we're talking Metallica or Rose Cora Perry and the Truth Untold, the best way to honestly support them is to put your money where your mouth is. Go and see them live, buy concert tickets, buy merchandise, show your love beyond just putting up a post on Instagram or Facebook saying, hey, I was there. I mean, truthfully, this is a musician's bread and butter. And if you find value in their music and what they do, you should be willing to compensate them for the amazing amount of time and talent and, energy that they put into their creations for you. Because truthfully, I mean, anything that has value is worth something in your life. If you have an emotional attachment or an emotional takeaway because music hits you in a really, really tremendous way, or it becomes, your favorite song at a wedding or a special occasion, or even, on the opposite, becomes a funeral song to celebrate somebody that you love that's no longer with you. That has impact. That has meaning. That's emotion. That's significant. And that is worth something.
You've spoken openly about music's role in overcoming depression. How has music served as a form of therapy for you?
That's an amazing question. And I think, honestly, most musicians, songwriters, artistic types could probably tell you that whatever medium they use for their artistic expression, it is a very cathartic thing. So I have spoken openly about the fact that, especially as a teenager, I overcame some pretty tremendous stuff in terms of self-esteem and self-worth issues, feeling depressed, not feeling great about my life or where I was. And truthfully, music became a tremendous outlet. Does that mean that I'm always perfect and happy-go-lucky all the time? No. Does that mean that I still have bad days where I'm feeling kind of crummy? Yes. But guess what? That's part of being human. That's part of just living. Not every day can be sunshine and rainbows and puppy dogs and kittens. As much as I would love it to be, and I'm sure everybody else would love it to be, that's just not reality. Life sometimes sucks, and oftentimes those sucky things happen, three things in a row. I don't know why that is. It's just kind of like universal laws of nature. You get good things and bad things that come in threes. However, what is really, really important is that you find some sort of healthy and safe way to be able to deal with those struggles if you're feeling down. And what I can tell you is one of the worst things that you can possibly do, speaking from my own experiences and what I've seen from my own friends, is kind of internalizing everything and feeling like you need to face the world alone. Like there's this big, globe on your shoulders and you have to carry the weight of that all by yourself. That is not true. So everybody has their own way of coping with things, whether that's reaching out and bitching and ranting and going out and having a girls' night or stuffing your face with pizza or ice cream. I mean, there's so many different ways that people cope with anything. And they're not wrong. But what I can tell you is that the worst feeling in the world, and I know this from when I went through my really, really bad struggles as a teenager, is feeling alienated and isolated and entirely by yourself and like no one else in the world gets you. And so why songwriting became so important for me is because I started to reflect and listen deeply to the lyrics of the musicians where I'd listen to their music and it hit me in such a powerful emotional way. And it's like, you know what, Chris Cornell, Alanis, I will likely never meet you in my lifetime. Well, obviously not Chris, rest in peace. Such a tremendous artist, but I'd listen to their stuff and it was like they understood a piece of my heart and a piece of my mind in just such a genuine way that it didn't even seem possible because I don't know these people on a personal level, but it's that what they were saying was so universal and so real that it made it accessible and relatable. And so with my own songwriting, initially, truthfully, I just started writing for myself as a means of trying to get out all of the nasty stuff I was feeling in a really healthy way because I didn't know what else to do. I honestly felt really isolated. I felt like people didn't understand me. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I got bullied a lot, to be honest. I was kind of the weird artistic kid that never really fit in. And that's okay. I mean, that was obviously part of my life's journey for a reason. But what I found is that when I turned to songwriting and I started going to concerts and becoming a regular, I would meet, the freaks and, the ghouls, as Billy Corgan says. And I found my place in society. I found that rock is in my heart and it's there for a reason. And I found that when I started sharing my music with people, it really impacted them too. And I was like, wow, there's something really powerful about being a musician. It's not just about doing it for yourself. And that's fine if that's the only reason that you're called to do music. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong about that. But being able to connect with people in such a visceral and a real way is really impactful too. And I don't take that for granted. So when I do write my songs, I try to write in a really accessible, real way, giving that same gift that the musicians that I turn to that help me get over depression, trying to give that to my own audience members.
The Truth Untold has gained significant traction. What's next for the band?
Touring, more singles, just continuing to do what we do, and that's sheer badassery and rock and roll. And we do have a new single that will be dropping early this summer, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. What I will say is that the video is literally fire. You'll have to watch to find out what I mean by that.
You've achieved so much already, from performing internationally to hosting TV shows. What's a dream goal you have yet to accomplish?
First off, thank you. That's very flattering. I think that there's something to be said about going after your dreams and going after what's in your heart. And I mean, truthfully, if there's something that you want to do and you haven't tried it yet, the only person holding you back is yourself. Of course, there's always restrictions and, financial or societal or whatever. But if it's something you truly want to do, there are creative ways to come up with innovative ways to be able to do things. So no, I never hosted a TV show on or MBSC, for example. However, I did on a local broadcast, and that was still a really satisfying experience. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like the $1 million version of something. Just like if you want to perform, there's nothing wrong with somebody going out and singing at a karaoke bar versus, playing a stage to 100,000 people. It's still performing. It's still being able to connect with people. It's still something really, really real and sharing that gift. So there's always not compromises, but ways of re-envisioning the dreams that you're after accomplishing. As far as kind of dream goals, one of the things on my bucket list, truthfully, is I want to write a book. I'm not sure how that's going to happen yet. I have some ideas, but it's something I want to do. So we'll have to see how that unravels. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a New York Times bestseller, but it's something that's on my list of things to do. I have a lot of thoughts, as I'm sure you've gathered. And sometimes, as much as I love music, I can't necessarily articulate and capture everything that I would love to say just in a song. Sometimes it requires further exploration.
What legacy do you hope to leave behind in the music industry?
I mean, beyond just being a musician, as a person in general, anybody that I've had the privilege of kind of knowing, whether that's as a fan, a colleague, a friend, a family member, I just want to make sure that I've done something that makes you happy and real, and that I've connected with you in a real way, and that you never wondered where you stood with me, and that we just were able to share something really magical and special together. I guess, if I think about, this is going to sound dark, but if I think about how I want to be remembered after I pass and I have a funeral and all that stuff, instead of people gathering in mourning, I would rather them gather sharing their favorite silly, ridiculous stories about me, because there are plenty. If anybody's had the privilege of interacting with me, and Jesse especially, my bassist, can tell you, there is always some sort of lunacy involved. But hey, that's what keeps life interesting. Thank you, Professor Headbanger, for this fabulous interview. Thanks for everybody watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you want to learn more about me, again, I am Rose Cora Perry. My website is Rose, like the flower, Cora, C-O-R-A, Perry, P-E-R-R-Y, like Joe Perry from Aerosmith.com. My band is The Truth Untold. You can follow us on social media. We will be putting together a tour announcement shortly, and keep an eye out for new music from us as well. Thank you, and rock and roll.
Thank you for watching the video. Stay true, stay metal. See you next time.